I'm 22 and I still haven't gone to college. Now, I want to preface this by saying that I am not by any means dogging education. I don't really believe in the notion of college being a scam either. Realistically, I look at college as more of an investment, and it's up to the investor to scope out the investment as well as manage it and decide whether or not they want to keep investing in it. With proper planning and focus, I do think that college does bring some benefit, plenty of it to be honest with you. I, however, decided to drop out after my first semester. I'd rather say that just for the sake of transparency because I wouldn't want to lead with any false narratives. When I was about to graduate high school, I had just been introduced to self-improvement in the red pill space. I was learning more about the world and going through a more rebellious period of time in my life. I saw college as a money trap and didn't have a desire to continue academic studies. Now, this isn't saying that I didn't want to learn. It's actually on the contrary. I read and studied more than any other point in my life once I dropped out of college. I actually used to skate by in high school and would rarely, if ever, apply myself to the point where failing tests was normal. And at least for math, I would get a 23 or a 36 on a math test and that shit would be normal to me. I literally I was so desensitized to the idea of failing in math specifically that I did not care. It didn't even faze me. It was just regular. I think if I got a 50, I think when I actually studied, and that wasn't even really studying, I got a 52 or a 59. And my math teacher was flabbergasted. She was like, "Oh my God, good job. You're getting better." And I'm just whatever. So it wasn't until my last year of high school when I took AP art that I started to kind of explore my potential a little bit more, mainly just due to the teachers I had around me and my already vested interest in art. I've always been interested in art. That's probably the one thing that would actually get me to sit still and pay attention. And it wouldn't really be for that long because I'd be more interested in doing what I wanted to do anyway. I would vividly remember doodling in every single notebook that I had. If you gave me a piece of paper that was blank, you could expect that within the next 10 minutes, there's going to be drawings on it. It didn't matter if they were good to me or not. I didn't even care. I just wanted to fill the page with drawings. So having teachers around me that kind of saw that in me and pushed me and motivated me to keep trying to get better. I remember one teacher, she sat me down one day and she was just like, "Daniel, you have a fear of failure. You have a fear of failing. And that's why you're not applying yourself, because you're scared that if you do actually try, you'll fail." And to this day, that's probably one of the most accurate readings that somebody's ever gotten on me without me having to even say much, which at the time really rocked my world. And that's what made me actually want to try to apply myself, because I didn't like that there were teachers around me and people around me that genuinely saw me for who I was and believed in me and saw some potential in me. I didn't want to disappoint them. I genuinely didn't want to disappoint them. At that point in time, I didn't really care about myself as much, but I did really care about not disappointing the people that believed in me. So it was a very difficult time, but it was only a difficult time because I was doing things in part for the wrong reason. The only thing that really mattered to me throughout all of throughout all of high school and that period of time in college and a decent amount of time after I dropped out was this dream I had. It was the only thing that mattered. I wanted to be a full-time music producer and artist. I was inspired by friends that I had that found early success and other artists like Travis Scott. I still remember I'd sit down and I'd visualize and I'd watch these Travis Scott concerts and I'd pretend I was performing in my room and I'd put on beats and I'd pretend I was doing a whole performance. And I really put myself in the position to where I can visualize myself actually doing this. And it did bring me good benefit. It wasn't a thing that I did in vain. It wasn't lost. But I do remember that period of time where I was just so heavily focused on this. I would talk about it nonstop. It was all that I thought about. And at the time, nobody could tell me that I wouldn't make it or that I wouldn't be somebody. That one day, I always talk about where I'd come back to school with a Ferrari and they'd see, and I'd flex on all the teachers that were telling me that, my head was in my ass. They obviously didn't say it like that, but that's what it felt like. College was the last thing on my mind, and I had so many reasons not to go. or at least not to try, you know? And at the time, in my mind, those reasons were valid. Like, nobody can tell me anything. That's all I thought. I thought that I knew everything. I thought that I figured it out. I thought I was like, we're living in a matrix, and I got this shit figured out like the back of my hand, and I'm about to take the universe for a joyride. My family being a family of Haitian immigrants, and me being a first generation Haitian American, they had a very different perspective. They put a lot of emphasis on education, and I could understand completely why, seeing as they had to work incredibly hard and still do just to do what they do to have the lifestyle that they do in this country. And naturally, because of that, there was a culture clash. But ultimately, it was my older sister that kind of encouraged me to really give education a shot. Not even education, but more so giving school a shot. Because one thing that I still want to drive a point at is that I'm not against education, nor college, but I was never against the idea of self-education. Like, I was always adamant about pursuing my curiosity. Like, I didn't like not knowing things. I liked learning. Like, the idea of learning is something that I've always liked. I actually did go to college for a semester, and it did go well. Like, ironically, math was one of my best subjects. Now, did I cheat a little bit? Sometimes, I'm not gonna lie. I definitely cheated on like 1 or 2 tests. I'm not even gonna lie. I definitely cheated on like 1 or 2 tests. But it actually got to the point where I didn't really have to cheat anymore. And I think one of the main reasons as to why I excelled so much at the math was, 1, they put me in a remedial math class. 2, I realized that I was actually never bad at math or any subject for that matter. I just didn't actually apply myself and try to learn the material. And 3, the teacher that I had, not saying that my other math teachers weren't good, but the teacher I had in combination with those other 2 variables made it very easy for me to sit down and actually apply myself. I wasn't fully there, but I was starting to transition into being like, okay, I could apply myself. I can get this done. I actually enjoyed some of my other classes too. Like, there'd be certain prompts in English that we were writing for, and I'd be excited to actually write. After a certain amount of time though, and a certain amount of time was realistically like 2 weeks, maybe like a month, I was getting not motivated, but I was getting influenced by what I was still surrounding myself with. So seeing my other friends be successful in music, and they're in LA and they're living their life and they're having fun. They're like with a different rapper every other week. They're in the studio, and then going on YouTube and watching all these videos of all these rappers in the studio cooking up, or these producers cooking up. It was just a mental culture class again. It was just a mental culture. It was just a mental culture clash, because here I am in this classroom, or like at the time it was virtual because this was around COVID, so it's like virtual. So here I am on this computer in this classroom, and then one of my friends that I make music with is like in the studio with like 6ix9ine or whoever, and I'm just like, damn, I could be there too. Because they wanted me to be there, and I can't be there because I'm in school. And I was just like, damn. So after a while, it just started to really eat at me. And then that, in addition to the fact that that friend was still giving me business. So like whenever there was like an opportunity that came through, he would send it over to me too. So I'm doing graphic design work for rappers. I'm making them cover arts, and I'm getting paid to do it. So now I'm getting paid and making money in a career that I actually enjoy, while still being in school and paying off school. It just started not to make any sense, and I couldn't ignore it any longer, because in my head I was like, if the point of me being here is for me to make money, and I'm already making money, then why the fuck am I here? Like, that's just literally what kept ringing through my head, and I couldn't think of any other benefit to school. Like, I didn't think of the social aspect. I didn't think of the fact that you could actually, learn other things. I didn't think about the fact that money literally is not everything, and that there's other things that will give you value. I didn't think about the fact that I might be making more money now, but in the long run, I can learn a skill that could potentially make me more money. There was just a bunch of things that I didn't think about, because the only thing that I cared about at that time was, I'm making money. Why the fuck am I here wasting my time with you losers when I could be here making my money and living life? You know what I mean? Like, that's what my mentality was. It was a lot more arrogant. It was a lot more self-centered, and it was a lot more simple. It was a lot more of a black and white view. So after a while, I kind of just decided to drop out. And at the time, it made sense to me, and it still makes sense to me. It was still a decision that I feel like was the right decision to make. I feel like it was the right decision to make because I was so young and naive and so arrogant that I just needed to be let free. Like I needed to fuck around and find out myself. I needed to be taken off the training wheels, and I needed to go full throttle into this life shit and see if I know what I'm talking about. Because that was the only way I was really gonna get it. There was no other way I was going to be able to really come around to what I've come around to now in terms of my understanding. I'm not going to lie. Like if I was parenting myself and I saw myself doing what I did, which is what I did essentially, but if I saw that from like an outside perspective, I would give the same advice. Like I'd be like, yo, drop out. Just drop out and try to do this thing. Because when you're so young like that, you just have this fire within you and you just have this burning desire to prove yourself. I don't know if everybody has it, but I had it, and I see it in a lot of other people. And I saw it in a lot of the friends that I used to have, where you just have this burning desire to just slap your dick on the table and show people like, yo, what's up? I'm him. Like you just have this unblooded arrogance, you know? You want to prove yourself. And I had to have that trial by fire. I had to try to take life on at that point because that's what I was ready for, you know? That's what was calling me at the time. That's the way my heart beat at the time. But after I dropped out, I spent time hopping from job to job, trying to support myself. The main reason why I thought that I would jump from job to job so much, or why I think I jumped from job to job so much, or what I observed at least, because it's true, is the arrogance that I was speaking about earlier is the arrogance that I carried with me in these jobs. So I'd go from one job, then I wouldn't like the treatment, or I wouldn't like how things are going. So then I'd go to another job, or I wouldn't like how much I was getting paid. So I'd go to another job. And don't get me wrong, to a certain degree, you have to do that. You have to get into these environments and assess whether or not they are right for you. But there were definitely times where my arrogance got the better of me, or my desire got the better of me, and it led me to making a miscalculated decision, or a decision that could have been made with a smoother transition in mind. You know, it could have been a lot smoother of a ride, but it's always easier to say after you've made all the decisions that you've made. So I grappled with a lot of problems and growing pains, and like the sobering reality of life hit. That's why I said I just needed to go out and do it, because nobody could convince me otherwise other than life itself. There was no force powerful enough to talk. There was no verbal force powerful enough to break my mind. There wasn't. I needed to have the experience. Sometimes you really just have to let people fuck around and find out. It doesn't matter what you say, because it's just not going to penetrate. Sometimes you need action, because action will move things along. So I was forced to kill that naive nature that I had. Like the arrogant swagger and the pompous valor that I had was just completely extinguished. And I spent a good maybe year and a half trying to get it back. And I'd still hang around the same friends, and I'd still consume the same content, thinking that one day maybe the spark will reignite and I'll become that arrogant man that could just take on the world again. But the reality is the flame was extinguished because I began to realize more about the world. I realized that I was nothing more than a speck in a cosmos, you know, a grand cosmos. And that this arrogance I was walking around with, this almost air of condescension that I looked at people with because I thought that I had it figured out and they didn't, was stopping me from having a true human experience. And it was also stopping me from growing, because I had those same judgments that you pass on to people will not hurt them as much as it hurts yourself, because it limits you from growing. You know, if you're hypercritical of somebody being fat, you're even more hypercritical of yourself being fat. So if you're fat phobic towards like other people and you're like, oh, look at this guy, he's fat as shit, da 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 da, you would think that the person being insulted is suffering, but it's really the person doing the insult that suffers the most, because they can't even do the bare minimum. People that think that way can't even eat a chocolate chip cookie without feeling like absolute shit. Like they can't do it. Like they psychologically break because they're judging so many other people they judge themselves 10 times as hard. So for all of the judgment, for all of the condescension that I had for the world, because I thought I had it figured out, it was stopping me from understanding more and growing, because that was magnified on me 10 times. So it reached a point where my self-awareness wouldn't allow me to be arrogant anymore. And the experiences that I had in life molded me to be a more humble man. Although I wasn't in school, I still self-educated. I would definitely say like self-education was like the moonlight that guided me. Like I started reading more and learning more about what actually interested me. And that was another thing that I wanted. It's just my mind is very sporadic sometimes, and I find myself jumping from topic to topic, especially if something doesn't interest me or if I feel like I'm not getting what I sought after out of the thing that I am studying. If I feel like I can do something that better occupies my time, I will. And unfortunately, being in an environment like college at that early of an age would have been pretty bad, because I would have had to keep shifting around or struggling with this idea of internally shifting around, because I'm still trying to understand things. You're 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, even 25, like you're still coming across your first time for things. Like we talk about the first time for sex, like that's a very common first time, but like nobody talks about your first time getting fired, or like your first time having an argument with your boss, or like your first time getting food poisoning, your first time dealing with a situationship, your first time dealing with like being late to work, or dealing with like a boss that's abusing their power, or dealing with like parental issues. There's so many first times that you're gonna run into that nothing or no one can prepare you for, and life is gonna throw you in so many different ways that sometimes it's hard to just say like right now at this age, yeah, I want to commit to this thing. And it's not a matter of commitment issues. It's how can you commit to one thing without fully understanding what you're committing to, or what other options there are that are available to commit to. You know what I mean? And that was the philosophy that kind of blossomed from that initial decision. The initial decision was made purely off of ambition and insecurity, but it blossomed into this understanding that I have now, that you can't just force somebody so fresh into the world to just make a decision like that. No, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that everybody doesn't know what they want to do. There's kids that know what they want to do off rip and they got it on lock. They do, but not everybody's like that. And I feel like college is definitely a better breeding ground for exploring yourself, for sure, because there's a lot more freedom, there's a lot less restriction. And I do feel like the high school systems are very prison-esque, but that's a conversation for a different day. But college is definitely a lot more of an open ground. It's almost like a precursor for the real world, quote unquote. But at the same time, it's still a really big decision that has to be made. And I feel like I just wasn't prepared to make that decision. But as I continued to go through life, that dream also got extinguished. And it didn't get extinguished for the reasons that most people expect, like giving up because it's not working. It was working for me. It wasn't I wasn't famous yet at all. My streaming numbers weren't that high, but I was making money. I was making money off of music. I was doing what I wanted to do. I was in studio sessions with rappers. I was in the houses of like millionaires. It was crazy. It was a crazy time, and I got to see so much and experience so much, but I wasn't fulfilled anymore. Like I wasn't ever fulfilled. Like I didn't feel fulfilled. I didn't feel the same way I felt when I was a kid making YouTube videos. You know what I mean? Or when I first started making beats. Like I didn't feel like that anymore. I just felt like I was doing something because I said I was gonna do it, and now I just have to make it happen. And even the end goal that I had in mind, where I just wanted freedom to do this, to study Hinduism, to study Buddhism, to read, to write, to journal, to meditate, to go to the park, to explore. None of that had anything to do with a music career in terms of milestones. Other people around me, they wanted Grammys, they wanted, accolades, they wanted fans. I didn't care. I didn't even want to be famous. And that's when I really started to realize, like, I'm looking around, everybody got chains on, they're trying to look fly, and I'm just in my Crocs, or I'm in my work pants, and I don't care. I just, in my head, I just genuinely don't care. And the experiences that I went through, everything that I went through just made me into this person that didn't care. I didn't care to be seen anymore. When I was younger and I was more insecure, and I'm not saying that everybody has that desire or that dream to be famous because they're insecure. because that's just, it can't be true for everyone. But for me, it stemmed from my own insecurities. It stemmed from not getting enough attention when I was younger. But in giving myself that attention, I no longer wanted to be famous. I no longer wanted to be in the limelight. So then I grappled with this idea of giving up this dream, because I still believe that if I gave up this dream, then I'd be a failure, because I conditioned myself by watching all of this self-improvement content, by watching this red pill content, by watching just thousands upon thousands of hours of all this content, and then being surrounded by friends that were already trying to do that. There was no room for a differing perspective, because I didn't allow it. Because I thought to myself that if I didn't do this anymore, then I was quitting and I was a failure in life. And I was just like the people around me that were bums and not doing anything with their life. Because I thought, or I had this perpetual fear for years that I was going to be a bum. You know, and it's like, oh, I didn't go to school. I'm pursuing music. I have dreadlocks. My family thinks I'm a bum. Everybody thinks I'm a bum. And a lot of it was internalized growing up based off of what I heard around me and based off of stereotypes that are perpetuated towards my people, which does suck. And it is very hurtful to even say out loud now and realize the psychological damage of that. But once I became aware of those being the mechanisms holding me in that place, I could no longer allow them to bind me. And I started to really realize, I was like, yo, I don't have to do any of this shit. I don't have to do any of this shit, and I don't have to appeal to everyone. I just have to be myself. From the outside looking in, depending on who you ask, I can be a bum. Yeah, I mean, I could be a failure. But they don't really get to decide that. Only I get to decide that. Nobody else really gets to decide that but me. As long as I'm waking up and I'm doing what I have to do and I'm being a good person and I'm not hurting anybody, then I decide who I am. And once I realized that, it was like the master key I needed that allowed me to kind of almost transcend this karmic part of my life and move on to the next part of it. And that was really just pursuing more so of this video essay-esque, more conversational approach to talking with other people and sharing how I got myself out of dark places, or sharing things that I've observed about the world or that I've learned, because I genuinely enjoy learning and pursuing personal growth. I enjoy those things. So helping other people along their path do that is something that gave me a deeper sense of fulfillment. Even if it was 10 views, even if it was 5 views, I got a deeper sense of fulfillment. I'd work endlessly to produce that type of content, and seeing how it affected the people around me, and it made me a more positive person. It made me a more lovable person to be around. Even just me being around myself, me being in my own presence, I can enjoy being in my own presence without feeling so damn negative or so pressed to do something. I could just exist. It's a different form of relief. Now, I'm not saying that I have it all figured out. I still don't have it all figured out. And honestly, I probably never really will, because this life is just one big journey with trials and errors. There's a big world out there, and it doesn't come with the most guidelines. Like, we have set ideas or rules in place. Like, we know we have moral rules, but outside of that, there's not really one way to skin the cat. There's more than one, you know. You could be famous selling your toe pictures online and live your life that way, or you can be a monk, or you can be a librarian. Like, there's an infinitesimal amount of ways to exist, and there's so many ways to go. So you can't be scared to pick the wrong way, because you're meeting all of this for the first time. And that kind of segues me into my point, where I don't regret not going to college or dropping out of college. And I don't regret still not being in college for my newfound circumstances. I don't feel like it's necessary to regret any decision that we've made in our lives, because it's our first time trying to make those decisions. And the only thing that we can do aside or instead of regretting is going forward and making better decisions to lead to a better tomorrow for each of us. Now the path I have is completely different. And if you had asked me when I was 18 if this is who I would be and this is how I'd speak and this is where I would be, I would have told you that you're fucking crazy. I would have told you that I'm going to be rich as shit. I'm going to have a Ferrari. I'm going to have a waiter. I'm going to have silk on. I'm going to have a Mary's, and nobody can tell me shit. And I'm probably going to have my own Jordan. Like, I grew so much in that period of time, and I'm so grateful for the lessons that I got along the way. And I'm just coming to a point now where I'm very much content with myself and striving for more at the same time. And I'm also not putting as much pressure on myself. I'm not taking myself as heavily as before. I'm allowing myself to really heal, you know? And I feel like no matter which path you choose, whether you choose to go to school or not, whether you choose to work in that warehouse, or if you decide to just go all in on your personal side business instead, whatever you choose to do, this life is going to throw you, and it's going to give you a bunch of obstacles, and it's up to you to really stay true to yourself. And remember that staying true to yourself doesn't necessarily mean staying true to the same commitments that you made when you were a different version of yourself, because every day you're growing. Every day you wake up, the person that you were yesterday dies, and a new opportunity comes about to be a new person. You know, we just remember who we were and we try to be that again. But if you feel like the person that you're trying to be is no longer who you are, then find yourself again. Find who you want to be, or find who it makes sense for you to be. And only you'll know what that is, you know? You might have to take a year off. You might have to take 2 years off to really figure that shit out. But what's more important is that you do, and that there's no rush, because this is your life. Nobody else's life but yours to live. If you guys did enjoy this video, just make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe. This is my first time really trying to make a video like this, where it's a bit more open and honest and drawn out. Make sure to leave some feedback below, and